sexual harassment is not a new phenomena at all. So any inappropriate and sexually explicit behavior towards women has existed across the cultures through centuries. But with increase in women entering the workforce, the number of cases relating to sexual harassment at workplace has also seen a drastic rise, right? So if you look into 8 out of 10 women are reported facing harassment at the workplace, and the law for protection of against the sexual harassment at workplace came into existence in around 2013.
Right. In fact, it all started in 1992 when Bhamri Devi, a social worker, a rural woman who was a social worker, was employed by the government of Rajasthan to work for women and child welfare development. When she tried to prevent a child marriage, she was gang raped by upper caste men to teach a lesson. Now, this created a furor across the country because initially the case was not taken seriously and it was dismissed. Various NGOs and social activists came together and filed a public interest litigation. In 1997, the Supreme Court pronounced a landmark judgment in Vishakha and others versus State of Rajasthan and others. For the first time, the Supreme Court laid down guidelines recognizing and addressing hazards of sexual harassment at workplace faced by women. Now, the guidelines are based on the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the CEDAW in short. It recognized any form of sexual harassment against women in workplace as a violation of the fundamental rights guaranteed under Articles 14, 15 and 21 of the Constitution of India. Now, these guidelines came to be known as the Vishakha Guidelines.
I think this Vishakha Guidelines is pretty much prominent and most of them know.
Yes.
So this is nothing but the set of guidelines in the workplace which was established by the Supreme Court of India in 1997, of course, stemming from the Bhanwari Devi case as such.
Yes.
Now, here it requires the employers to prevent the sexual harassment by defining it, providing complaint mechanism with a complaints committee also, which has to be headed by a woman, and ensuring the procedure is kind of very confidential and time bound. So these guidelines were later codified into the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and the Redressal Act of 2013.
Right.
Now, all sexual harassment cases were dealt with in accordance with this Vishakha Guidelines, which was laid down in 97, until the enactment for the specific law relating to the prevention of sexual harassment at workplace came in, right? Now, such law was also enacted in 2013, as I mentioned before. And now this act is popularly also known as the POSH Act.
Right. Subhadra, as you mentioned, the POSH Act, as it is called, was enacted in 2013 with the objective of protecting women from all forms of sexual harassment at workplaces, primarily with the objective of providing a safe and secure work environment. So with the three main objectives, prevention, prohibition and redressal, now the Act aims to make the workplace a safer environment for women.
Right. Now, the POSH Act is also applicable to all the organization, companies, whether it is firms, sole proprietorship, etc.
Right.
Now, if any entity has got like more than 10 or more employees, then there has to be an internal committee, has to be constituted. Now, such employees can be also permanent, they can be temporary, ad hoc, they can be consultants, they can be interns or contract workers, irrespective of the gender, right?
Right.
So it is to be noted that even if the company does not have any women employee as such, if the number of employees is 10 or more, then POSH committee must be constituted.
Right.
So for any entities with less than 10 employees, there is no need to constitute an internal committee. However, there have been instances of sexual harassment at those workplaces, like you may have it in the camp, which will be reported to the local complaints committee, generally in the district, usually which is headed by the district magistrate.
Right. So now that you mentioned that it is applicable to all organizations, so clearly the be it the Vishakha guidelines or the POSH Act, which stemmed from the Vishakha guidelines, the onus and the responsibility is squarely on the company. It's the obligation of the company to ensure a safe work environment for women. Now, to this end, what must corporates or organizations do? Every organization to which the POSH Act applies must define and implement a policy against sexual harassment, outline what behavior is unacceptable behavior, and outline also the procedure to file complaints, and also create awareness that there is a redressal mechanism in place and make sure that the mechanism actually works. To this end, as you mentioned, organizations which have 10 or more employees must constitute an internal committee wherein at least 1/2 of members of such internal committee, or IC as it's called, must be women. It must be headed by a woman. As I mentioned, also we need to ensure that organizations undertake awareness programs and specifically customize it to the management, customize it to the employees, stakeholders, and make sure that there's something called a POSH Act in existence.
Sandhya, with the onset of this COVID, which came in, the entire office workplace scenario has completely changed, right? So the workplace is now today extended from working from homes. Homes have become more of virtual offices, and of course, meetings and the other day-to-day office work is also moved from definitely the physical realm to more of an online platforms, right? So we are having the digital and electronic telecommunications. We have the mobile, emails, messaging platforms, which have all become the medium platform to conduct and carry on a professional work. So one would have thought that with workplace becoming virtual, cases of this sexual harassment, in fact, would have reduced to a large extent. But on the contrary, if you see, there has been significant increase. So in 2024, in fact, the data which has been published in media has indicated that there has been about 40% increase in POSH complaints across major tech companies and banks. So these two are the sectors where women are employed the most, I would say.
Right. Subhadra, as per the POSH Act, sexual harassment at workplace also includes any one or more of the following unwelcome acts or behavior, whether it is direct or it is implied, such as physical contact or advances, a demand or request for sexual favors, making sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, and any other unwelcome physical, verbal, non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature.
Right. So adding to it, I'd like to point out some of the instances for harassment which are there online, right? Like asking or sharing very intimate, personal or sexual details for any kind of voyeuristic purposes, sharing very suggestive or obscene pornographic images or messages. So any kind of inappropriate or chats which are suggestive or sexually colored or soliciting sexual favors, right? So these are all some of the examples. And also insisting on keeping the video mode on after the meeting is over or after the office hours. There are instances where taking pictures or screenshots of women employees without their knowledge or permission. I think that is to a large extent.
Yes, that's what happens predominantly.
Yeah. And stalking women employees on social media platforms is also very, very common. And making a lot of personal comments or sharing pictures of the women employees in office group chats, which is also very common. And also calling the women employees with inappropriate nicknames. So any kind of making any kind of inappropriate comments about the women employees' dress or dressing sense also calls for all under the harassment.
Right. Actually, I recall reading when I was doing reading about this. I recall reading on media and other platforms, social media platforms, cases, some instances which was widely reported without keeping the corporates, without divulging the corporates' details. A manager wore a T-shirt which had a profanity and a vulgar gesture to an online meeting. Okay. I don't know if he thought much about it, but then it was so unwelcome and it was so uncomfortable for the women that they actually made a complaint to the POSH committee of that organization. Then
Right.
A very common thing one could hear especially during the COVID pandemic, was instances where employees were shirtless and bare-bodied when, like a team leader was bare-bodied and shirtless when he logged into an online meeting with his female manager, who was also a senior. Now, this must have put her at so much discomfort and unease. Again, a complaint was, lodged. And you had mentioned about cracking inappropriate jokes against women, misogynistic or sexually colored jokes, calling with nicknames, etc. One of the other instances I remember reading was when a senior had coerced his women employees to log into a night suit party on Zoom after work hours. Now, I won't say that
Right.
that was per se, but then, the women employees were coerced into attending. So it's the coercion part where, which became uncomfortable for women to attend, and hence a complaint was lodged. So one could hear such complaints, details about such complaints, especially during the COVID pandemic and thereafter.
So, Sandhya, we already spoke about it. The POSH Act was implemented, in fact, to protect the harassment, in fact, in the physical office space. But post the COVID, the entire change had come into where workplace has changed from work from home. And of course, the fundamental question was whether a remote work from home office also would be considered as a workplace under the POSH Act, right? So the plain reading of this definition under the Act makes it extremely clear that the POSH will apply to work from remote locations or work from home. And courts have also from time to time emphasized and reiterated that the protection and safety of the women working not only in traditional physical office places but also on virtual or digitally through other various places is also completely valid under the POSH Act, right? It covers it.
Okay. Subhadra, in 2023, while hearing a POSH case, the Supreme Court of India took suo motu cognizance of the inadequate implementation of the Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act, the POSH Act of 2013. Observing that there were serious lapses in its enforcement, the Supreme Court issued a slew of directions to ensure its strict and effective compliance nationwide. Now, to this effect, from 2023 onwards, several directives have been issued by the Supreme Court of India. The court mandated a district-wise survey to verify the whether internal committees were constituted at all in all the workplaces to which POSH applies, thus reiterating that the statutory duty is on the employers, namely organizations of all sorts employing people. Okay.
Right.
Next, this was in 2025. Again, in 2024, the Ministry of Women and Child Development launched a sexual harassment electronic box. In short, it's called She Box. It was introduced in August 2024. Basically, it is meant to be a unified platform for women to file complaints, monitor their status, and ensure that complaints are processed in a timely and an effective manner by the relevant authorities. Okay. Now,
Right.
women from all sectors, that is what SheBox also holds. Women from all sectors, organized, unorganized, private or public, can file a complaint if she is sexually harassed or assaulted, irrespective of the hierarchy. Now, this is an additional facility that is provided in addition to the POSH committees that must be put in place in the respective organizations where such women work. In July this year, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs notified a new compliance requirement to all entities, which was aimed at improving the workplace safety and accountability of such organizations. Now, what was the directive or the notification? It mandated disclosures in the Board of Directors report about compliance or otherwise of the provisions of the POSH Act. Okay. Now, non-compliance or failure to compliance could lead to penalties and imprisonment, penalties ranging from 50,000 per director, going all the way up to 3 lakhs for every organization which failed to comply.
So the sexual harassment of women at workplace, whether it's physical, online, or in any kind of the virtual realm, is a social evil that only impacts the women determinedly, but it is an indicator also of the development of our social fabric and also the economy of the country, right? So POSH is a watershed law that begins by acknowledging, addressing issues of women's safety at workplace, and it must not be viewed as mere as a compliance checkbox. That's very, very important, right? So safety of women is the fundamental right legally under the Indian Constitution and morally from a human perspective. So it is important to break the class ceiling without breaking the spirit of womanhood. I hope this video would have been useful for all of viewers. Once again, thank you for watching us and see you. Bye-bye.